talking about gestational diabetes. This is relatively common, unfortunately. About 5 to 10% of women who have gestational diabetes will develop diabetes type 2 postpartum after they give birth. So between 5 and 10% will actually maintain their diabetes, unfortunately. Lots of women are pre-diabetic, and if they're pre-diabetic before they get pregnant, of course, then they will potentially develop type 2 diabetes during their pregnancy, and it can be very dangerous. I've seen women who had gestational diabetes who died during their pregnancy. Of course, this is in the older days. Now we are able to control these things a little bit better. And this is one of the reasons why a woman who is pregnant, whether she's a junior high school student or not, she really needs to go in and see the doctor. Especially if she can afford it. If she can't afford it, of course, but she still needs to go in. She really needs to go in, just in case this is the problem. The other problem, of course, is hypertension, eclampsia. Eclampsia is where when she gets close to her due date, she develops really high blood pressure, and it can kill her. I had a sister-in-law that was eclampsic. During her delivery, she was pre-eclampsic, and she almost died. And of course, they almost lost the baby as well. So this is something that you have to think about. Something that you need to know about before you get into the operating or before you get into the delivery room. Complications that can develop from type 2 diabetes, of course, heart disease and stroke, of course. The problem that most people think about, well, most people think about heart attack or stroke, but you can also go blind. One of the things that happens when you are diabetic is you get a hardening of the arteries, in which case potentially some of your blood vessels may burst. They may hemorrhage, in which case it looks like this. This is what a diabetic's retina looks like. As you can see, you have all of these burst blood vessels all over their retina, which means that potentially they're going to go blind. They will go blind. Once upon a time, of course, I was around when they first invented birth control pills. And the first birth control pills were high doses of estrogen. And the estrogen was causing the same kinds of problems. So women were actually going blind so that they wouldn't get pregnant, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I know, it sounds stupid. But unfortunately, that was one of the side effects of the early birth control pills. Of course, we don't have those birth control pills anymore. They're not high doses of estrogen. Nobody uses high doses of estrogen, but there are other things that we use, progesterone and estrogen, much lower doses of estrogen. Dental disease is another problem, of course, mainly because of the circulation, the poor circulation they have to their extremities. Since they have poor circulation to their extremities, they also have poor circulation in their eyes, obviously, from the going blindness, but from going blind, but also in their gums. And so this can be a problem, a real serious problem. One of the things that you will see is an individual who is diabetic. They'll lose all their teeth because they can't maintain them because of the poor circulation. Blood vessel damage, of course, it's all over their body, and of course nervous system damage from all of the poor circulation. Diabetes may be caused by multiple factors, including viral or bacterial infections that damage the islet cells of the pancreas, an overactive immune system, and genetic vulnerability. One of the things that happens to diabetics is that they develop an autoimmune disease, and that's because their immune system is working overtime, trying to fight the diabetes, but of course there's nothing that the immune system can do with the diabetes, so instead they develop an autoimmune disease like arthritis. Lupus is another one that is not that uncommon as far as diabetes is concerned. And of course it changes your genes, so you have genetic vulnerability. So once you become diabetic, giving birth to a child there is a danger to it. And the doctor will talk to you if you're diabetic. They'll talk to you about having another child or having a child after you become diabetic. Normally, they suggest that you don't have a baby. It's just too dangerous. It's too dangerous for the baby, and it's too dangerous for you. You may actually make yourself worse. It'll exacerbate your diabetes. So they tell you not to do that, potentially not to do that. And the other problem is, of course, the diabetes has changed your genes. So that's something else that you need to think about. Obesity is known as a known cause of type 2 diabetes. Nutritional westernization is also a risk factor. As we well know, looking at what you were eating before Europeans came out to the plains and since then, and of course before Western man wandered his way over here or up here from Mexico, you guys were eating some fairly healthy foods. Healthy foods to the extent that you were developing diabetes. But now, of course, now that you have been forced to eat the food that Westerners eat, since Westerners are acclimated to this food, it doesn't really bother them, but of course it does bother you. It's too much sugar, too much fat. Far more fat than you're used to eating. Far more sugar than you're used to eating. If you think about it, where in the world did you get your sugar before? There was no cane sugar. There was no cane sugar. There was no corn syrup. So where in the world were you getting your sugar before? Fruits, yeah, if you could find them. I guess there were orchards around here. I guess. Apple orchards, peach orchards. So there were peach orchards around here. Of course, peaches, they're only ripe for what? 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe berries, if you could find them. Honey, if you could find it. But that was it. I mean, there was no other sugar that you were eating. And if you think about fat, of course, beef are very fat. They have lots and lots of fat on them. But one of the problems and this is one of the reasons that they called the Assiniboine, they're actually the Dakota. But they call them the Assiniboine because these guys would butcher a buffalo, and then they take all the bones and they would boil the fat out of it, and they mix it with berries, and they would use it, they would eat it in the wintertime. And that's why they called them the Assiniboine. Assiniboine in Dakota means they boil with hot rocks. That's what Assiniboine is. That's obvious that sounds, because they cook with hot rocks. So what they would do, they would dig a big pit. They take all the bones, they put water in the pit, and they put hot rocks in there to boil all the fat out, and then they scoop the fat out the top. And then they'd make it into, whatever that is, it's pemmican, I think that's what they call it, pemmican. Anyway, but that's another tribe that none of us represent. Not even Michelle. Well, wait a minute, your dad is part Dakota. Yeah. Yeah, was it his mom? No, it was his dad.
My last name is
I know her dad. Her dad and I are good friends. Isn't it amazing that she happens to be here? Yeah. My best friend up at Montana is her dad. I know. Yeah, she doesn't have to worry about it. Great. The truth is, I didn't like her dad that much, so you better do better. Anyway, okay, about 30% of overweight people have diabetes. 85% of the people with diabetes are overweight. The more fat tissue a person has, the less sensitive the tissue is to insulin. And of course, this is a really serious problem. And this is one of the reasons why when you develop diabetes, they tell you to lose weight. The more fat you have, the less sensitive you are to insulin. Poor diet may partly explain why some racial and ethnic groups are at increased risk. African Americans, especially the ones that live in the Delta, Hispanics, and we're going to talk more about Hispanics in just a minute. Increased TV watching associated with reduced physical activity, of course. Since they're not working, what do? They sit around and watch television. Fat cells release a protein called pigment epithelium-derived factor, or PEDF, into the bloodstream, which causes muscle tissues muscle cells and the liver to become desensitized to insulin, and of course that's what causes type 2 diabetes. The pancreas attempts to compensate by producing more insulin. As the person gets more and more obese, the pancreas may react by slowing or even stopping insulin production, and of course that's when the type 2 diabetes hits. Stress has been noted as a factor in diabetes, especially those suffering from type 1 diabetes, not especially type 2, but type 1 diabetes. Researchers have discovered that people suffering from type 1 diabetes have greater variability in their glucose with stress than people who do not suffer from diabetes. I told you I had a friend from grade school. I met him in the first grade. He had type 1 diabetes, and if he got stressed out, we'd have to find him some orange juice so that he wouldn't go into a diabetic coma. But we would have to find him orange juice. Luckily, he was a brilliant person. He was the one with an IQ in that 170 range. So he knew just about everything, and it really didn't bother him to take a test. That wasn't the problem. It was usually something else that was bothering him. His sister had given him a hard time, or his brother punched him on the way to school or something. It was usually the problem. Abnormal blood sugar responses to challenging events in conjunction with high levels of stress may directly contribute to diabetes. Stress may also indirectly promote diabetes by reducing compliance with treatment. Most people with diabetes can control the disease through lifestyle modifications. All you have to do is be a good boy or girl. You need to change your diet. You need to regulate your weight, reduce your weight. You need to exercise regularly. Exercise is good in itself, but if you haven't developed a routine, then your body isn't used to the exercise. In which case, if you decide, well, geez, I never run on Sundays, but here I think I'll run on Sunday. What that will do with your body is it will actually stress it out. And if it stresses it out, then it's not going to do you any good. And that's one of the reasons why you have to develop a routine. And as long as you keep that routine and exercise regularly, then you're more likely to regulate your sugar level. Your body gets in a rhythm. It creates habits. So when it is time for you to exercise, your body knows. Well, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and I always run at 7 o'clock in the morning. As long as you do that over and over and over again, then your body will actually regulate itself. And if it regulates itself, it's going to control your diabetes. If you exercise erratically, then your body will never know when it's supposed to produce more sugar. And of course, at that point, you may have a relatively serious problem. Using insulin is necessary. What are we doing? Lifestyle. Oh, lifestyle. So you may have to inject yourself with insulin. And there you go, somebody injecting themselves with insulin. You don't have to use your stomach. In the old days you did. All insulin injections were through the stomach. Not a whole lot of fun. If you contract rabies, the rabies shots have to be in your stomach as well. But in the old days it used to have to be as close to your pancreas as possible. Your pancreas is right here under your rib cage. It's right there. That's your pancreas. Your lungs are above that, being protected. Your pancreas is actually being protected as well by the bottom of your rib cage. So what they would have to do would be to inject themselves as close to the pancreas as possible. And that actually worked. Now they use their thighs as well. There are select types of insulin that you can inject into your thighs. Self-management is a cornerstone of treatment. Most people are able to control their diabetes through lifestyle modifications, as we said before, changing your diet, regulating your weight, and exercising regularly. If you're diabetic, one of the things that you will do is that every time you go in to see the doctor will draw, he will draw glucose on you, but he will also draw a glucose A1C, a hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin A1C measures the amount of glucose in your red blood cells. The glucose itself measures the amount of glucose in your serum. That's the functional glucose that you're utilizing right now. That's how much you're using at this moment. However, the red blood cells also contain glucose. The more glucose they contain, the more glucose you've been eating. Hemoglobin A1C will tell the doctor how well you are regulating your diabetes, whether you have cheated too much over the last week or the last month. That's what hemoglobin A1C will tell the doctor. And this is one of the reasons why they talk about it on television. They talk about controlling your hemoglobin A1C. The reality is you can do that by being a good girl or boy and not eating a lot of sweets. As long as you don't eat a lot of sweets, then your hemoglobin A1C will be normal. And that's really what they're looking for. If you cheated, if you ate that Hershey bar and you weren't supposed to eat that Hershey bar, you had already eaten enough sugar that day, and then your hemoglobin A1C is going to be elevated. And if it's elevated, the doctor's going to know that you haven't been a good boy or girl, whichever the case may be. Anyway, that's what the hemoglobin A1C is all about. Usually you can do a finger stick for glucose, but hemoglobin A1C takes too much blood. It actually takes serum, so you have to. Usually you have to draw. You have to draw somebody's blood with venipuncture instead of just a finger stick. Diabetes can either be a challenge or a death sentence. In the old days, when we were just developing how insulin works, when we were just figuring this out, if you got diabetes, you're going to live for maybe 4 or 5 years. So it's pretty much a death sentence. Now, of course, you're going to live for an extended length of time with diabetes. Athletes have diabetes. Select athletes have diabetes. But one of the biggest problems that you have is making sure that your feet are taken care of. The first, of course, it's your extremities. We're talking about blood vessel problems. We're talking about circulation problems. And the first area of your body that will have problems is your feet, because it's the farthest away from your heart. As far as your hands are concerned, you're probably okay. As far as your head is concerned and your eyes, you're okay. But your feet, of course, that's the farthest away from your heart. And for that reason, if you're going to have a circulation problem, the first place you're going to have a problem is in your feet. Part of the problem is that your feet will go numb to some extent. And for that reason, if you have a problem with your feet, or a sore on the bottom of your foot, or you're not getting good circulation, you have a dead spot on your foot, you may not know it because, of course, the circulation is so poor you're not feeling anything. So the doctor needs to look at your feet every time you go see the doctor, so that he can make sure that you don't have an infection. Of course, you can't feel it if you have an infection or you have any other problems. So foot care is very, very important. You also need to, of course, control your sugar level. You need to eat healthy. You need to do as much physical activity as possible. Most people will complain, geez, I got diabetes now. I don't feel like, I don't have enough glucose in my system. I don't feel like exercising. I don't have the energy level I had before. So how do you expect me to exercise? The answer is, you either exercise or you die. I'm sorry, that's just the way it works. You either exercise or you die. Now, if you're dealing with somebody that has never exercised, I was talking to one of my colleagues downstairs, and she would rather poke her eyeballs out than run. That's what she told me. I hate exercising. I would rather build a rock wall than exercise. That's the only type of exercise I'll ever do. And I'm thinking, yeah. Now, obviously, you don't have diabetes. Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, sure. So, yeah, we'd rather do something constructive. And she was complaining, my mother used to do this too. I've always been a weightlifter. I've been lifting weights for 55 years. And my mother always said, well, that's wasted work, is what she always told me. That it doesn't mean anything. Those muscles that you have don't mean anything because it's all wasted work. That's what my mother said. And of course, this young lady downstairs said exactly the same thing. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. What did you get out of that hour and a half workout that you did? Well, what I got was toned muscles. I know. I got that, and I also got my picture on the website. So when you look at the home page, I'm like, okay. And that's because I did things that potentially work. You know, running a 100-yard dash, who does that? Who runs a 100-yard dash? Only idiots that are sprinters that run a 100-yard dash. As stupid as that is. But because I did that, now I've got my picture on the College website. and a plaque that says I'm in the Hall of Fame. So there you go. I know. It's not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, so exercising for just exercising's sake. You don't have to build a wall. You don't have to dig a hole. You can just exercise for the fun of exercise. Isn't that why we run, Sheldon?
Yep.
Just for the fun of running. The other difference is, of course, Sheldon, the reason he runs is because he gets runner's high. Doesn't it give you a buzz when you run? I don't. See, I don't have endorphins in my life. That's why I'm not sensitive to opiates. So I don't get runner's high. That's why I was a middle distance runner instead of a long distance runner. That's why Sheldon could always run me in the dirt if we ever ran against each other. And of course, you need to take medications, you need to problem solve, and you need to actively cope with your problem. Trying to be in denial, saying that this isn't going to hurt me, this isn't going to kill me, will kill you. That's what will do it. So if you've got diabetes, you need to take care of it. And you need to do it lucidly. You need to do it with actively. You need to cope with your situation. You will never eat ice cream again. I'm sorry. It's just the way it works. You shouldn't drink that bottle of wine anymore. Or that bottle of pop. They're both actually very dangerous for you. Let's talk about Hispanics for a minute. In 2031, they predicted that 20% of the Latino population will have diabetes. As it turns out, if you look at Hispanic women, especially Hispanic women, they tend to be short and plump, and they carry their weight in their waist. They don't carry their weight in their chest, they don't carry their weight in their throat. But they carry their weight especially in their waist. And because of that, of course, they have more cases of type 2 diabetes. They have twice as many as non-Latino whites. What's wrong? What's so right about non-Latino whites? They are the opposite. They're called them skinny. I know. They eat the same shit. I mean, we're the ones that came up with all that sugar, fat, potato chips. Who eats potato chips? Edison, do you eat potato chips?
Sometimes, not all the time. I cut back on a lot of things.
You're such a good boy. Sheldon over there.
I eat it, I'll be honest, like barbecue, but flavor went to that.
Oh, okay.
Barbecue potato chips, or sometimes I'll get the baked potato chips.
See, that's okay. That doesn't have as much fat. I know.
But I stay away from the original Lay's.
Oh, that's my favorite. That's all I eat. Well, I don't have to worry about it because I'm a white guy.
Yeah.
I know. It doesn't seem fair, does it? Or does it? But you don't have to worry about that. Well, maybe you do, but you're skinny. You're slim. Yeah. You don't.
It's naturally just the way it is.
Well, not only that, but you're an athlete. And you've always been an athlete. So as long as you maintain that athleticism. Now here's a trick. If you stop, you're gonna get fat.
Yeah.
So you need to be an athlete all your life.
I'm playing this evening at 6:30.
Oh, basketball.
Yeah, I'll try to do something.
There you go.
But I hate running.
You hate running?
Today, to this present day,
Oh, okay.
this generation.
Oh, but if you be an athlete all your life, I've been an athlete all my life. I've been lifting weights for 55 years. You don't have to worry about it. Sometimes, I drink sugar in my coffee. I eat potato chips, but I can do that.
So, for the Hispanics, like they have a lot of alcohol.
They drink
a lot.
a lot, yeah.
But they don't get beer belly as other tribes.
They don't develop beer bellies.
Ethnicities do.
Most Hispanics, including her, have some indigenous ancestry. Okay, that's why they look the way they do. They look like, well, they confuse you guys with those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. And it's because of their indigenous ancestry. And the reality is, and this is really something kind of interesting about Mike Malone. He claims his indigenous ancestry from Mexico. And I found that really interesting, really fascinating. I can understand if you're coming to genetic college, but he has the Navajo blood. Of course, his wife is there. And he doesn't have any Navajo ancestry, but he does have a Mexican ancestry, and he has indigenous Mexican ancestry, and he claims it. Most Mexicans can't tell you what tribe, but he can. And I can't pronounce the paycheck or something. They're right across the border from Arizona, as a matter of fact. And you gotta admire the guy for that. Most Mexicans don't do that. Most people from Mexico do not claim their indigenous ancestry. But the reality was that when the Spanish soldiers came over, when the Spanish came over, what did they do? Did they become celibate? That means they didn't have any sex. I know, Edison doesn't know. Well, maybe they didn't. Maybe they just started reproducing. Maybe they found themselves a hot chick. I'm sorry, did I say chick? I'm not saying. Maybe they found an attractive female personnel and impregnated. I mean, that's a possibility. Well, and it's a very large possibility. So, of course, when we talk about somebody from Mexico, we potentially may be talking about somebody who has 100% indigenous ancestry. It's possible. I had a guy that worked for me up in Omaha, and I swear this guy looked like an Aztec prince. He looked like one of those sculptures of an Aztec, the Aztecs.
Yeah.
And he was pale. He wasn't dark. He had chiseled features like one of those Aztec, whatever. Well, he was paler than I was. And if he went outside, he wouldn't tan. He wouldn't burn either. That was the bizarre part. It's like his skin was, I don't know, brown. No, brown's not the right color. His skin was beige, and it stayed beige. He didn't get darker. I mean, it was just bizarre. Just really, really bizarre. Anyway, okay, so the Hispanics are going to have problems in the future if they don't stop eating European cuisine. And that is the end of chapter 10. So let's start on chapter 11. We do have time, don't we? Yeah, we get time. Chapter 11 is about cancer. Have any of you ever had cancer? Nobody? I'm the only one? Yeah, I had skin cancer. I had a chunk taken off here, and a chunk taken off over here, and a chunk taken off over here. Skin cancer. Can you see the scar? No, I know. The doctor did a great job. Cancer. It was a carcinoma. We're going to talk about carcinomas right now. So I can identify with this. My mother used to have chunks chopped off her face all the time. My poor mother. It's just skin cancer. And I say just skin cancer. It's probably not going to kill you. It's probably not going to metastasize. Normally, if you have a skin cancer tumor, a tumor that is skin cancer, that it will not go anyplace. Unless it's, and I'm going to show you the dangerous kind. The dangerous kind isn't skin cancer, it's melanoma. It's melanin. The reason that your skin is darker than mine is because you have melanin underneath. If you were African, you'd have a lot of melanin underneath your skin. If you were somebody from Europe and you could tan, what is happening to you is that the melanin is coming to the surface, and that's what causes your suntan. There are people with almost no melanin at all. If somebody is albino, they don't have any melanin. So those people can't go out in the sun. They'll burn, they'll fry, they'll just cook if they go out in the sun. It's really kind of curious. So the darker you are, the less you have to worry about skin cancer. However, you still have to worry about skin cancer. As pale as I am, I have to worry about skin cancer. I have a brother that had a chunk of skin cancer cut off him, and he started worrying about multiple myeloma and melanoma. So when he goes outside, he wears a long sleeve shirt, he wears a hat that covers his whole face. You know, he's as pale as death. You know, he won't show anything. But me, geez, I go outside. I mow the lawn without a shirt without sleeves on it, and my arms turn brown, and I love it. That's what I love. And the reason I've had skin cancer 3 times because I'm too stupid to cover myself up. Okay. I just wanted to put that out there. I'm too stupid to cover myself up. And of course, Sheldon's shaking his head. Yeah, you're pretty damn stupid. Yeah, you're right. I am pretty damn stupid. Cancer is a set of diseases in which abnormal body cells multiply and spread in uncontrolled fashion, forming a tumor. And this is what a tumor looks like. Now, the reality is we have cancers growing in our system all the time. But our immune system is attuned to kill those cancers off. And that's normally what happens. So usually if you're young enough and your immune system isn't compromised, if you're not immunocompromised, then one of the things that will happen to you is that you won't have to worry about cancers. How often do you see a 5-year-old with cancer? It does happen, but it's very rare. How often do you see a teenager with cancer? It does happen, but it's very rare. How often do you see a 70-year-old? I'm 68-year-old. How often do you see a 68-year-old that's had cancer? It's fairly common. And the reason is because my immune system is not what it used to be. Potentially it's not what it used to be. Normally you will develop cancers if you are immunocompromised for an extended length of time. I developed one of my cancers, I developed a heart attack right after I was fired from Fort Belmont. But I also developed a skin cancer about 6 months later. And it was a tumor on my forehead. I went in, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I kept thinking it was a pimple. That's how stupid I am. I keep trying to pulp that sucker, and it just wouldn't pulp. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. So I went in, the guy said, oh, that's a carcinoma. So he chopped it out, sent it in. Of course, they can look at it under the microscope and tell exactly what it is. He said, yeah, it was completely controlled. Your body was controlling the carcinoma, the tumor. But as you get older, of course, you're more susceptible to cancers. You guys not so much, but my population, the European population, yeah, we're pretty susceptible to especially skin cancers. Benign cancer cells that are controlled are considered to be non-cancerous, and that's what I had actually. It was a benign tumor. Malignant cancer is cancer cells growing unchecked by your immune system, and of course that is cancer. And I never had that. I didn't have that type of cancer. Cancer is the second leading cause of U.S. death. Normally, if somebody dies of old age, they potentially had a cancer somewhere. And that's one of the things that killed them. Metastasis is the process by which malignant body cells proliferate and spread to other parts of the body. So if I had a cancer here and I didn't control it, then potentially get in my bloodstream and it would go in other parts of my body. That's what happened to Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong had testicular cancer. And the testicular cancer spread to other parts of his body. He developed lung cancer and he developed a brain tumor. Luckily, somehow they were able to arrest him. They cut off one of his testicles, the one that was infected, of course, or the one that had cancer, and they were able to arrest the cancer in his lungs and the cancer in his brain. Now there's a problem anytime anything metastasizes. The reason that it is able to metastasize is because it develops the ability to protect itself. When a baby is first conceived, a baby has to protect itself from the mother's immune system. The mother wants to kill it because it's an alien structure. So the mother wants to kill it. The mother's immune system wants to kill it. The mother may not want to kill it, of course. So the baby protects itself with a substance known as human chorionic gonadotropin. And strangely enough, that's what we measure in order to tell if you're pregnant, is how much human chorionic gonadotropin are you putting off. The more cells you have, the more human chorionic gonadotropin you're spilling into your urine. And of course, whatever spills into your urine, we can tell if you're pregnant or not. Unfortunately, of course, if you have a cancer and it is moving from one place to the other, it is also protecting itself with human chorionic gonadotropin. And because it's protecting itself from human chorionic gonadotropin, your immune system can't knock it out anymore. It is protecting itself from your immune system. At this point, we need to either cut it out or kill it. And the only way we have to kill it is by methods that we're going to talk about in just a minute. Chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And that's one of the reasons why they use those. Okay. Carcinoma is the cancer of the epithelial cells that link the outer and the inner surfaces of the body. 1 in 6 people in the United States have a carcinoma. Carcinoma is just like I said, epithelial cells. Your skin is made up of epithelial cells. The inside of your bladder is made up of epithelial cells. All of your organs, all the coverings of your organs are all epithelial cells. So carcinoma is very, very common. 1 out of every 6 people will develop a carcinoma. Usually it's skin cancer, but sometimes it can be bladder cancer, it can be prostate cancer, since there are epithelial cells everywhere. When I was working in the laboratory, if somebody collected a urine specimen for us, we would spin it down and we would look at what type of cells were in there. Normally there were epithelial cells in there. Why? Because the bladder is covered, the inside of the bladder is covered with epithelial cells.
What does that spinning process cause? Does it cause it to separate the substances that are within the
cell?
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't work like the cell. We don't spin that part.
Mm-hmm.
It's a centrifuge. And the centrifuge is just forcing all the solid material to the bottom, and then of course all the liquid material is on top. So we just pour out the liquid, and then we can there's a button in the bottom, and then we mix it, and then we put it on a slide and look to see what's there. It's usually just epithelial cells. However, if you also have bacteria are also relatively heavy, so they will go into that button as well. So then we can see the bacteria. If the individual is losing sperm, which happens from time to time, sometimes males will lose sperm throughout the day, then we'll see sperm in there. If it's a female that has just had intercourse with a woman or has had intercourse recently, then potentially we'll see sperm in there as well, which is always interesting. Doesn't mean anything at all. It just means that they had sex at some point, relatively recently. Most of your breast is made up of fat cells and also epithelial cells. Prostate, of course, your lungs, the inner coating of your lungs are epithelial cells. Your skin, of course, is all epithelial cells. The inner covering of your colon, and of course your pancreas is covered with epithelial cells as well. That's carcinoma. The most common type of cancer is a carcinoma. A sarcoma is cells of your muscles, bones in your cartilage. It's all made up of a different type of material, and if a cancer grows or is developed in your bones, your muscles, or your cartilage, then it will be a sarcoma. About 2% of all cancers are sarcomas. Lymphoma is the cancer of the body's lymph system. It includes Hodgkin's disease and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. About 74,490 people were diagnosed with lymphoma in 2009, so it's relatively common. Your immune system is made up of white cells that circulate throughout your system, but also it's made up of your lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is in between all of your organs. You have this lymphatic system. You have this area that produces lymph cells, and lymph is another type of white cell. And so this lymphatic system is there. The only time you know about your lymph system is if you get an infection. So let's say you have an infection in your hand, you get a swelling in your lymph node underneath your armpit because you've got infection here. So the lymph nodes there would start trying to produce more and more white cells to fight the infection in your hand, and it would swell up in here. If you have an infection in your abdomen, then potentially you get one in your groin, the tops of your thighs. That's an area of lymph nodes as well. Your tonsils are lymph nodes. It's a collection of lymph nodes. So lymphoma is a cancer of the lymph system. If you have cancer of the blood, either the white cells in the blood or the red cells in your blood, doesn't really usually happen with red cells, but very relatively common with white cells. It's known as leukemia. What did I read about leukemia? It's increasing, I think. Leukemia is increasing around the world. Something very, very strange. Having worked in medicine for a number of years, I know what things looked like back in the 1970s, and I also know what things look like now. And one of the things we've discovered is that sperm counts are going down. They've actually been cut in half in the last 40 years. And we're not exactly sure why. Why aren't men producing as many sperm as they were before? And we have no answer. It could be our diet. It could be something else in the environment. We're not exactly sure what's going on. And of course, leukemia is increasing. Another thing that we're noticing is that arthritis is more common now. Lupus is relatively common. Lupus used to be a disease that we very rarely saw. I probably saw 3 or 4 cases while I was working. While I was at Fort Belknap, there's a family, and there's like 9 of them with lupus. It's a pocket. What it may be is the arsenic from the gold mine. It may be the arsenic in the ground. There is arsenic in everybody's, there's arsenic all over the place. But this is a concentration of arsenic, and it has gotten into your water supply, so that may have something to do with it. Why am I talking about this? Many individual factors such as gender, age, ethnicity affect susceptibility. It's very rare for a man to get breast cancer, but it's relatively common for women to get breast cancer. The older the people become, the greater their chances of developing and dying of cancer. And that's because of the depletion of your immune system. As you get older, your immune system gets weaker and weaker and weaker. So one of the things that you need to do is you need to keep your immune system strong. Well, how can you keep your immune system strong? Eat good food, exercise, that'll do it. That will do it. That will keep your immune system relatively strong. So that's one of the things you can do as you age. One of the things that I do is I consume a lot of vitamin C. I mostly consume it because I like the taste of lemons. So each bottle of lemonade that I drink, this is 16.9 ounces, that has half a lemon in it. And I'll drink probably 3 of these every day I drink. That's a lemon and a half. That's a lot of vitamin C if you think about it. But then you get vitamin C in potatoes, you get vitamin C in just about everything you consume. Green beans have vitamin C in them. So I get a lot of vitamin C, and that helps my immune system. And I hardly ever get sick. I think I got sick last year. Didn't I get sick last year? You guys remember me getting sick? I got a sinus infection. That's what it was. I got a sinus infection. The prevalence of different cancers varies by age group. 1 in 2 men will develop a cancer in their lifetime, and I've already developed my cancer, I hope. I hope I don't develop another one. 28% of all cancers diagnosed in men is prostate cancer. And of course, your prostate's really kind of a fascinating organ. It's one of those things that developed from, I don't know where it came from, but as we developed into humans, all of a sudden we started seeing prostate glands. So the prostate gland collects your semen. It collects semen, so it just holds semen in it. One of the things that we have noticed is that individuals that develop a venereal disease, a sexually transmitted infection, are more susceptible to prostate cancer. So the more gonorrhea you have had in your life, the more likely, if you have had gonorrhea in your life, then you're more likely to develop prostate cancer. The other thing that we've noticed is if you use it, then you won't lose it. I hope it sounds strange. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. That's the problem. So the men that don't have sex on a relatively frequent basis, on a relatively regular basis, are more likely to develop prostate cancer. Now this is really weird because most doctors will not talk to you about what is normal, the normal amount of sex that you're supposed to have. There is no normal, of course. You just need to get that stuff out of there from time to time. That's what you need to do. You just need to get that stuff out. And if you don't, then you're going to develop prostate cancer. There's a lot of prostate cancer out there. But then again, there's a lot of guys that have spent 18 months not having sex. And those are the guys that are going to develop prostate cancer. We see it, it's very common in priests, for example. It's very common in men who have contracted a sexually transmitted infection. So this is just a hint and a warning, and you can tell your wife, it hasn't worked for me, but I tell my wife, we need to have sex on a regular basis, honey, so that I don't develop prostate cancer. She laughs, of course, but she laughs at everything I say. I don't understand this. But the reality is, it's true, it's real. So if you maintain a fairly healthy sex life, then potentially you won't develop prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is extremely prevalent in men. And it's just something we need to think about. And it's something that nobody will talk about, damn it. There's two things you need to do. Stay away from gonorrhea and have sex on a relatively regular basis. That's all you need to do. 28% of all deaths from cancer are lung and bronchus cancer. Most of that has to do with tobacco. Tobacco has to be the most destructive substance we have ever put into our bodies. It is insane. Lung cancer, we're going to find out that tobacco causes cancer in just about everywhere in your body. 28% of all the deaths from cancer for men are lung and bronchus, even though it only represents about 14% of the diagnosed cancer. 1 in 3 women will develop cancer in their lifetime, and this is because as long as a woman is menstruating, as long as she is being protected by that estrogen, she is less likely to develop any cancers at all. Most of the cancers that are developed either are in reproductive organs, like breasts. Breasts are where they feed the baby, and then of course the other reproductive areas. Most of the cancers come from there, or it's lung cancer later on in life. They will develop a cancer after they go through menopause. 29% of all cancers diagnosed in women is breast cancer. 29% is breast cancer. 29% breast cancer. 26% is lung and bronchus cancer, though it only represents about 14% of the cancers that are diagnosed. In the United States, cancer is the second leading cause of death among children between the ages of 1 to 14 after accidents. Maybe I'm not supposed to talk about that. Maybe I'm not supposed to tell you to have sex on a regular basis. But, just between the 4 of us, there's Johnny's here. Just between the 4 of us, it can keep you from getting prostate cancer. Okay? Don't tell anybody I told you so. I was told that by a doctor way back in the 80s, 90s. I was using the 90s. He told me that they know this, but they can't tell anybody because people are really sensitive about talking about this. Well, damn it, if it's going to keep me from getting cancer, I want to know about it. Do you mind knowing about it? You do? Well, tell the provost that I told you about prostate cancer.
Do I mind them? Oh, no.
Okay, I was just hoping I wasn't going to get fired tomorrow afternoon, which could potentially happen, you never know. No, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So what are we talking about? Oh, so once you get married, you can have sex on a regular basis, and that's all. That's all you need to do, and that'll keep you from getting cancer. You can tell your wife, you can blame me if you want. It's not my fault, it's that damn doctor in Oklahoma that told me. So yeah, that's just, it's just the way the world works. African Americans have the highest incidence rates of cancer in the United States. African American women historically have been less likely to perform regular breast cancer screening. African Americans tend to have less access to health insurance and healthcare facilities. Why is that? If you guys have IHS, why don't African Americans have something like IHS? We could call it Negro Health Service. I know I used to call them Negroes. Just a thought. We can call them African American Health Service if you want. Why don't they have that? Why do you guys have Indian Health Service? You not only have it here, but it's up in Montana as well. Each of the reservations has an IHS hospital.
Is it in a treaty or something?
It's in the treaties, yeah. So you guys used to own everything. So what we paid you with was health service and education. I know, hey, there you go. We get all the land and all the minerals underneath, and you guys get health care and education. There you go. Well, at least we got something for it. So what about the African Americans? Why don't we do something nice for the African Americans? Why don't we at least give them free medical care? Why don't we do that? What's wrong with those guys? Why do we hate those guys? Why do we only like Indians and we don't like... Actually, there's more white people who got health insurance than there are black people. Why don't we do that? Canada does it. Canada has free health care for everybody. England does it. They got free health care for everybody. Holland has it. They have free health care for everybody. Why don't we do it in the United States? That's what we were trying to do with Obamacare. That's actually what we were trying to do with Obama. There's a lot of people out there that don't want to pay for other people's health insurance. Isn't that mean? Why should you pay for somebody else's health insurance? What do you guys have to worry about? You get free health care anyway. No, I don't want them people getting any health insurance. I just want Indians to be healthy. That's what white people at work say. Hey, well, I don't want to pay for anybody else's health care. I just want health care for myself. And that's unfortunately what's happening. So what do you think? Should we have health care for universal health care in the United States? Let's vote. Universal health care in the United States? It's going to cost you money. What do you think, Edison? Or should only Indians get free health care?
It should be for everybody. But it all depends on how much it's going to cost, and then it also depends on
Who cares? As long as everybody's healthy, right?
yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, might as well.
Thanks. Those of us who aren't Indians appreciate what you said. What do you think, Sheldon?
Been doing all right without it this whole time, so.
Just let them die. Can we use the F word here? What do you think, Michelle? It's going to cost you bucks. You're going to have to shell out for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and give them health care, free health care, just like you guys have? Okay. If it's as crappy as IHS, that'll work out. What do you think? Thank you. You're very kind. Okay. Well, that doesn't make any difference. What we say anyway, they're trying to do away with Obamacare, which only covered like 18 million more people. There's 316 million, 17 million people in the United States. It only covered 18 more million people. Well, how many people in the United States had health care? Well, all the Indians had health care. IHS. Who else had health care? It's like 217 million. So it added 18 million people. And most of the 18 million people that it added were kids. I don't know how you feel about kids, but I like them. And I want to help them as much as I possibly can. So when they're thinking about health care, they're thinking about, some 48-year-old drug guy on the street. I don't want to give him health care. Well, no, but you want to give his 8 kids health care, don't you? Anyway, they tried to do away with Obamacare. And they're doing a pretty damn good job of it, too. The idea was that they were going to come up with their own health care plan. Did they? Obamacare was voted in, when? 2010? Yeah, 2010. I know, so they've had 8 years to come up with a new plan. You know how much of a plan they got? Nothing. They got nothing. I know. But they had 8 years to do it. What the hell's wrong with those guys? That's what are you gonna do? I swear. African American women, okay, we already talked about that. So they have less health care, less insurance. Ethnic differences in diet play a role. African Americans tend to consume fattier diets. They tend to be relatively poor. And since they're poor, they have to buy the cheapest food they can find. And you guys know what that looks like because that's all the food at Bosch's. All that crappy food at Bosch's that everybody complains about. Except me, because all I buy is the food. But I haven't been to Chinley since 2017. I haven't visited Chinley since I came back this semester. I've been shopping in Gallup at Walmart. I don't know why. Like if they had a Walmart in Chinley, maybe I'd go down there. What are we doing? Okay, so they're consuming fattier diets. African Americans have 60% greater chance of contracting cancer than other minorities in the United States. African American males have high rates of lung and prostate cancer. Maybe they're not having enough sex. I don't know. Or maybe they're contracting venereal, sexually transmitted infections more readily than other individuals. African Americans are 33% more likely to die of cancer than European Americans. Okay, let's talk about boys and girls. Estimated new cancer cases and deaths by type and gender, and this was done in 2013. As you can see, the major killer of males is prostate cancer, and second is lung cancer. Now this is diagnosed cancer, it's not deaths. 28% of men are diagnosed with prostate cancer, 29% breast cancer for women. So breast cancer is one of the things that we need to look at as far as eradicating. But at the same time, we need to eradicate prostate cancer in males as well. Lung cancer, of course, kills more women and men than any other type of cancer. Colorectal cancer, 9%. As you can see, uterine or urinary bladder cancer, about 6%. For males, it's melanoma of the skin. Now, why would men have more skin cancer than women? Why do men have more skin cancer than women?
They're outside.
Yes, they probably are. I'm guessing you're right. It's not the fact that women are protected from skin cancer. They don't cover up every time they go outside. I've seen women sunbathe with hardly any clothes on at all.
Sunday.
Except sunbathing.
Oh. Going Sunday?
Sunday. I didn't see anybody Sunday. No, I've been to, it wasn't really a nude beach, but they weren't wearing tops. And it wasn't really a nude beach. Anyway. I've been to some strange places around the world. Let me tell you, I've been to beaches all over the world. And people wear different clothes wherever you go. And usually it's us. Melanoma. Okay, kidney and renal pelvis. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, about 4%. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for males, about 4%. Females, melanoma of the skin, 4%, 5% for males. Ovarian cancer, of course, males can't get ovarian cancer since they don't have ovaries. Pancreatic cancer, about 3% for both of them. There you go. This has to do with estimating new cancer cases and deaths by type. This is death, estimated deaths. The other was development of, new cases. This is estimated deaths. Lung cancer, #1 killer for both males and females. 28% in males, 26% in females. Prostate cancer for males, about 10%. Breast cancer for females, about 14%. So as you can see, breast cancer does kill more females than prostate cancer kills males. Colorectal cancer is 9% for both of them. Pancreatic cancer, around 6-7% for both of them. Females, of course, die from ovarian cancer. Leukemia, 4%, 4% for both males and females. That's it. That's about it. Okay. So if I asked you the question, what is the biggest killer as far as females and males are concerned, as far as cancer is concerned, what would you say? I'm sorry?
Reproductive.
I guess if we add all the reproductive together, it's 19% uterine corpus. I don't know if we can count uterine cancer. No, it'd have to be lung cancer. It'd have to be lung cancer for both males and females. And what causes lung cancer more than anything else? Tobacco. Tobacco. Yeah, that's
So do you think people smoke more than having sex?
They're smoking more than having sex? Yeah, they're smoking about 20 cigarettes a day. And I doubt
So
if
if they switch,
When they
all right?
switched, I think we'd be all right. Actually, there was a movie like that. where they had the Great American Smokeout, I think was the name of the movie. And there was this preacher, and he and his wife both smoked. They both smoked. And so during the Great American Smokeout, they tried to replace sex with tobacco with sex. I know. It was really kind of funny. Dick Van Dyke was the preacher. I know, it's kind of funny. I know. It was your joke, but Dick Van Dyke told the joke like 30 years ago. Epidemiologists estimate that even if we lived in a world where all environmental carcinogens could be avoided, 25% of the cancers developed now would develop anyway. So the bronchial cancer, the lung cancer would probably not develop since we wouldn't have the tobacco. The environment would be pure, so we wouldn't have the toxins in the air. But of course, we'd still have our prostate cancer and our breast and ovarian cancer. These cancers would develop because of uncontrollable genetic factors and biological processes, something that we can't control. Carcinogen is a cancer-causing agent such as tobacco, ultraviolet radiation, or an environmental toxin. Tobacco use is implicated in one of every 5 U.S. deaths. We are here on the Navajo Reservation. So when we're talking about environments being contaminated, what is one of the great contaminations on your reservation that I wouldn't have to worry about if I were anywhere else? Uranium, exactly. As a matter of fact, when Johnny was in Site 291, his character had cancer from uranium. Isn't that your character?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Johnny should have answered that question. But then he's doing something else. Right, uranium, exactly. We don't have uranium in Iowa, so I don't have to worry about it up there. I grew up in Indiana where we didn't have any uranium also, so I didn't have to worry about it there. But then when I joined the Air Force, there were nuclear weapons all over the place. Well, kind of. It's not like we had them laying around, but there was more radiation. I probably came in contact with more radiation while I was in the service than I have come in contact with until I came here. There are people that will not drink the water here because they think that it may be contaminated with radiation. Michelle knows some.
The water here has iron.
Iron's okay.
And I don't know what else.
It doesn't have any radiation. So I would say you're okay as long as you're drinking iron. I don't like the taste of iron. It tastes like blood to me. I don't know how many times you've been punched in the mouth. But I've been punched in the mouth too many times to like the taste of blood. And water that has iron in it tastes like blood. I'm sorry. Watermelon tastes like blood too. I know, I'm scared. Of course, I can't eat blood. And that's Sheldon's fault. Tobacco is the single most lethal carcinogen known to man. So why in the world do we even have it? Why don't we outlaw it? Why don't we do that? We could do that. Just the 6 of us, we could do that. Well, no, we can't. So what is it that keeps... There's not that many people that smoke or chew tobacco, so why don't we just outlaw it? There's got to be a reason. It's dangerous. It kills people. So why can't we outlaw it?
Revenue to the
Money. Man, who's got enough money to buy this stuff? I mean, like a pack of cigarettes, what, $6? That's too much money. Most tobacco-related deaths result from cancer. Tobacco use is also linked to cancers of the mouth. So we're not just talking about cancer of the lungs. We're also talking about cancer of the mouth, cancer of the pharynx, cancer of the larynx. Anything that it touches, it potentially can cause cancer. Esophagus, pancreas, as odd as that sounds. The uterus. Now, what does the uterus have to do with smoking tobacco? Nothing. But you're more susceptible to cancer if you smoke tobacco. Cancer of the uterus if you smoke tobacco. Cervix. Here's a reproductive area. What does tobacco have to do with your cervix? Is it time? It's past time, isn't it? Kidneys and bladder, the other two. Okay. I'll see you guys next time. Sorry, I didn't mean to run over. It was Sheldon's fault as always.